Welcome to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast.
Welcome back to A Fork in Time, the Alternate History Podcast. What you're about to hear is the audio rendering of our live stream from September the 22nd of 2022. We did that on our YouTube channel, so you can certainly go and check it out there if you want to get both the audio and the video. See the heads that are talking while they're talking. But if you only catch it here as an audio format, we've produced it here on the podcast feed. You'll hear reference in the episode to some of the things that we're going to potentially be exploring. They relate to conspiracies. If you listen, it'll all make sense. But we actually are putting that up for a vote among our listeners about which of those 6 or 7 conspiracy ideas you'd like to see us pursue. And so what we're going to do there is you'll find also a link in our show notes here inside of this episode where you can go in and get access to the survey that will let you cast your vote. We encourage you to do that sometime in the next month or so. We're actually going to take one of those ideas and turn it into an episode here on the podcast. But I'm going to stop talking now. And what you'll hear next is the intro to the live stream from Thursday, 9/22 of 22. We hope you enjoy. All right. My screen says we are live. So taking off from SNL from the 70s, what I want to say is from Texas and Arizona and Kansas and Maryland live. This is A Fork in Time. So I hope that you guys have taken a good part of your evening out to join us. I'm really excited about what we're going to do here. The word that we've been using, I think we have overused it now, is pumped. We've used the word pumped like 4,000 times for this in the last couple of months when we first had the idea that we would do a live stream. And so we're excited to be here. I think of Eric Rush, who you see on the screen here. He is the godfather of the A Fork in Time Room Where It Happened live streams. I think you were the one that first really started advocating for it pretty consistently, Eric. So I'm going to give you the credit as being the godfather and the inspiration behind the fact that we are here. What we're doing right now, and I'm going to go around just the screen here, which is also now your screen. What's cool about this is you get to see what I get to see, or we normally get to see when we talk about doing a recording. You know, the people on my screen. Well, on the podcast, it's an audio medium for the most part, except when Robert and Chris got really bold and went where they went.
Well, on the podcast, it's an audio medium for the most part.
Somebody's getting some feedback there.
Chris got really bold and went where they went. Well, on the podcast, it's an audio medium for the most part.
Somebody's getting some fefeedback there.
Chris,
it's Eric. It's Rob.
Eric, if you can mute. There you go. But this is what we get to do, and this is how we get to talk to each other before we get going. So I'm going to go around to say hi to everybody, and it's going to be like you're sitting in on what we do when we talk about that off podcast thing. This is sort of where we are. This whole thing is off podcast. So if you're joining us today, just to orient you a little bit, this is a new thing for us. We don't know what this is going to be, how it's going to work. There's a place for you to, it should be, if you're joining on YouTube, you should be able to go over into a chat section and say something to announce your presence and pop a question in there, that type of thing. So I'll be glancing over there every now and again. I'll ask the other members of the team who are monitoring the flow as well to do the same. In fact, I'm going to throw the first thing over there and it says say something. So I'm going to channel my inner Chris Coppola and I'm going to type say something. So there you go. So you guys ought to be able to see that now. That's out there on the thing. So starting with you, Mr. Rush, this was your idea, along with the rest of us, to do a live stream. So here we are. How do you feel about a live stream? And how do you feel about a live stream? There you go.
I feel great about the live stream. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
There you go.
I feel great.
Eric's gonna have to figure out the delay here from the real time recording and the push out. So hopefully he'll get on that. You see the other Eric there. We're gonna have to come up. You guys are gonna have to either change your name. We're gonna have to come up with some nicknames. We're gonna have to start calling you Rush or Bond.
Yeah.
Or whatever we're gonna do here. So go ahead, Eric. Good, Rush.
That is funny, Don. In 7th grade, there were 2 other Erics at my elementary school. And because everybody just called me Bond, I thought, you know what? I really like Ricky Nelson. What if I just started calling myself Ricky? It did not last more than an hour before I was like, you know what? Bond is fine. But hello, everyone.
Hi, Eric. Mr. Koshu, how are you this evening?
Got to find that ubiquitous mute button. I am great, everybody. Glad you're joining us on our live stream. I'm like everybody else. I'm pumped. I've been pumped for 3 days.
The other word we use that for a lot for, so I'm going to go and put the first plug in for it. Now, if you have not listened to our episodes with Dr. Bo Breslin on The Room Where It Happened and the first of the episodes on A Fork in Time, we talked about how pumped we were to do those recordings, and those exceeded expectations, in my opinion. I really enjoyed those two. We have more to come. So we use that word there for a while. We were pumped about the live stream and pumped about Dr. Breslin. We're still pumped about both. So we're happy to be here. Mr. Capola, you're in my lower right-hand corner, and I guess you're the lower right-hand corner on the feed too. How are you?
Hello to the good people.
Hello to the good people. Thank you, Chris. And they're on the in the middle on the Brady Bunch layout. It's a little bit different here on my screen. Is my daughter and co-founder of the podcast, Alexis. How are you doing this evening, Lex?
I'm good, and the person behind me will probably get brought up later on today.
Yeah, we have. We made sure that's Alexis's husband, Jake, that's behind there. He apparently has signed the waiver, so it's okay to have the back of his head here on the live stream, and we're good to go. So I'm going to sort of jump right in, and we again invite our listeners to participate there in the chat or send some other stuff over to us. But we did have one question submitted in advance by Dylan Holzheimer. And if the name sounds familiar, Dylan is who joined me on the episode where we managed to keep Elvis alive. And Dylan is from Memphis. And Dylan is a longtime listener to the show and understands the show's meta, for lack of a better way of describing it. Because I'm going to minimize my screen here so that I can read it exactly as it is. Dylan's question/comment is as follows. I'm definitely joining the live stream, and he wants to know, when will Chris and Eric host the AFIT barbecue contest? So the topic, gentlemen, and gloves are allowed to come off. The topic is barbecue.
Oh, hang on. I want in on this.
Robert, you're here. You're part of the show. You're welcome to jump in.
There is no way I'm claiming Kansas or that whatever that South Carolina junk is over good old-fashioned Texas barbecue.
So I'm going to go around here really quick. And first of all, the problem I think in this whole debate is, what is barbecue? That's actually where this starts, right? So, Chris, I'm going to give you first rights here so that we can all attack you after the fact and let you go first so we can set you up. But from the Carolinas, where you hail from originally, what qualifies as barbecue?
First, North Carolina. Secondly, vinegar-based pulled pork. Chopped is acceptable as well.
Okay. No beef?
No beef. Generally, what you'll have it on is a potato roll with coleslaw. And finely chopped, none of the stringy stuff.
Okay. So it is pork. The sauce is vinegar-based. And in the ideal scenario, it is pulled, chopped in a pitch.
Because I don't like my barbecue sauce to be spicy ketchup from Whataburger.
All right. The gloves are off now. So, Robert, you have the right.
I have a question before we go to wherever. Okay. And where do you cook it?
Generally, a pit in the backyard.
Define pit.
A hole dug.
So below ground. It would be below grade, Chris, correct?
Generally the coals will be below grade.
Okay. All right. So that qualifies as Carolina barbecue, which, okay. Robert, write a first response here before we turn it over to any of the other participants.
So I've watched this done before. Actually, our church does it. We have a team brisket and team pork cook-off. And I'm just going to say team brisket sells out every year. I'm just saying. Team pork, we usually haul theirs down to the fire station at the end of the day. So,
and where is this held?
So Robert, if I said here in Houston, where we both grew up and where we both reside, I said, let's go get some barbecue. There's several good places we can go. We can name some by name, but nobody's sponsoring us on this. But the expectation is you're going to have your choice among different types of things, but primarily it's going to be what?
It is going to be beef brisket. And the reason the beef brisket was chosen, it's a history podcast, is because when they were doing the cattle drives, they could slaughter a cow and use the least expensive cut of meat. And they figured out, the cowboys, how to do it was you had to cook it low and slow. So a hot and fast brisket will be cooked around 275 to 325 for 10 to 12 hours. Real low and slow goes 175 to 225 for 15 to 20 hours.
And if
they're sliced, and we don't put sauce on it either, by the way.
If you're eating it straight, you can do that. If it's in a sandwich, the question is going to be sliced or chopped for the most part here. And but we will also permit at finer and good barbecue establishments, and we have plenty of them here in Houston. One of the reasons we're one of the fattest cities in the country, because we eat well here, is you can also get pork, you can get links, and you can also get chicken. That's been done as well. So it's not limited to just beef, but if the default would be beef. Now, Eric, there's something different going on in Kansas, something similar going on in Kansas. What's going on with this thing called barbecue in Kansas City?
So most of Kansas City barbecue is in Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm sitting on the Missouri side of Kansas City at the moment, and I grew up in Kansas though, so I'm a Kansas boy. So I would say that the Kansas City barbecue is going to be much more of it's more of a sweet sauce. It's going to be more brisket, burnt ends, things like that. It's going to be really, really smoked for a long time. That's really how you're going to get the barbecue to be exactly the way you want it. And my favorite establishment in Kansas City is one called Joe's Kansas City. It's a great barbecue place.
Okay.
If I could go ahead and chime in very quickly.
Sure, Chris.
With a wonderful, wonderful story. It is NFL season again, so I have to share. I was at a family cookout with my in-laws across the street from the Cowboys training facility. And if you know about my allegiances, it's a miracle that I was there with a bottle of lighter fluid and did not wind up on the evening news. And I was on a grill cooking some chicken, and a Texan in-law made the mistake of coming up to me and saying, "You're from Maryland. What do you know about barbecue?" To which I replied, "I'm originally from North Carolina, and I know enough to know that you cannot barbecue on a Weber."
So, Mr. Bond, is there anything remotely that we would call California or Arizonan barbecue? Is there even a dog in this hunt?
They probably put pineapples on it. I wait, that's pizza.
No. The closest I haven't even had a lot of barbecue. The closest I've come is really having some Korean barbecue with my friends, because my friend's mother worked at a Korean barbecue restaurant.
All right.
But it was good.
So Dylan raised this question about how are we going to resolve the great barbecue debate, which has come up on more than one episode. It has certainly come up more than once in off podcast discussions. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. So is there a way that we can decide, for those of you that don't know this podcast, I'm about to mention one that's become one of my favorites recently, a podcast called We Got This. If you're familiar with it, I recommend going to it, where they answer these types of questions. Somebody will pose a question like, what is the what is the best barbecue? That would be a question that they would try to resolve, and they would try to work out, the two comedians that are there. So my question is, how can this be fixed, or is this ultimately going to be the barbecue civil war?
I think what should happen is everybody should make me brisket in their own style, send it to me here in Arizona. It is about to be Rosh Hashanah, the new year, and I think it would be an excellent way to start with some brisket. Help a friend out.
So, Eric, you're saying that
impartial.
You are neutral, impartial, and you can be the judge.
I am a middle child in all things, Don, as you know. So I think if anyone has a right to judge, it is me.
And by definition, you are excluding the original barbecue as a history podcast. I feel the need to point this out.
Tell us more, Chris.
That would be barbacoa.
Oh, yeah?
Continue,
Yes.
Chris.
Okay, so do we want to go with the Arawak story of it being slowly cooked fish, which made its way up into coastal North Carolina for the pork? Again, by the very definition of what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, Bon, you're excluding the original barbecue, or the original American barbecue, we could say.
Is this your favorite conspiracy theory, Chris?
This is not.
Oh, we haven't.
This is not.
We need to get into the conspiracy theories next if we don't have another question.
Yeah.
That's going to be our next one. So
we're going to go there. So now, the one thing I have to do, in fairness to Dylan, who asked the question, Dylan is a lifelong native of Memphis. I have been to Memphis. I have been through Memphis, but I can't
Don,
say
that is not my problem. The fact that he's from Memphis is not my problem. I'm sorry. I don't put salad on my barbecue. If I want a salad, I'll eat a salad.
So I was going to ask, what is the style? I'm very familiar with the genres of barbecue that have already been mentioned here. What is the genre of Memphis barbecue?
They put coleslaw on everything, right? I mean,
no, it's pork ribs.
It's pork ribs, but then they make their sandwiches.
Tennessee does it too. They do a dry rub rib.
To be perfectly honest, and we did an entire episode about this, at least their food didn't start a global pandemic.
Now hold on. There is no proof that happened. There is no proof. The fact that it started in Fort Riley, Kansas, does not mean that it started in the Kansas City stockyards.
And
we've gotten
gotten to a conspiracy.
You know what, Chris?
We've gotten to a conspiracy.
That is your conspiracy theory. And you know what? If that's your truth, man, that's your truth.
Eric, come on. It's okay. If it wasn't for y'all, I would still be bored. Never mind.
Well, okay.
Long story.
So that's the one thing is the fork in time. The one thing we can't do is we can't butterfly each other away.
That doesn't exist, and we have a bigger problem.
Yeah,
What's that?
If we butterfly each other away, then the podcast never exists.
There's no podcast. Yeah.
And then you get into the whole circular science fiction. How do you change history? Is it an inevitable meta thing?
And by the way, that is basically why in no podcast will ever prevent the Second World War, because that would probably butterfly me away.
There you go. So I don't think we can resolve this question. We will leave it open. But
well, for now. But I have
until we send barbecue to Bond and he picks the winner. I mean,
no. Well, okay, we can send it to Bond and have him be the winner. But what we really
come on, gang, it's about to be the new year. You want to ring in 577.8 correctly.
So the American Royal Barbecue Competition is going to be here in Kansas City, and it's usually here in the fall. And so I think that there needs to be some entries. I think there needs to be some entries.
I'm going to go ahead and call foul on. Remember, if you actually are going to observe it, you need to fast that day.
Well, that's fine.
I can wait until sunset.
I'll tell a quick story here about a friend of mine and a friend of his who became a friend of mine. One of my good friends is involved in baseball heavily. I'll just leave it at that. He's actually one of the official scorers for the Houston Astros and good friend of the family. I think Rick listens to the podcast every now and again, so this may be a call out to him. But I participated for a number of years in a simulation baseball league that we participated in that had been going on at the time I joined the league. It was almost 40 years. This thing had been going on. Stratomatic is the name of the game if you're familiar with it, and how it evolved over time. Started with dice and with cards, and eventually, of course, had moved to computers over time. So I joined this Stratomatic league that had been around for a while. But one of the guys that was in the league was actually a former major league pitcher who had a brief but okay career for the Atlanta Braves, and had pitched collegiately at the University of Texas. And so I got to know Tony. I won't call him out with his full name, but Tony would come, and Tony was in our league. So it was sort of cool to have this ex-major league pitcher, who was in our league, and we would get together each year for the convention and the draft and play about half the games over a weekend. Tony is about 6'5". He looks like an athlete. He's got an athlete's build, a pitcher's build. And Tony loved to come to Texas because he loved to eat. He loves to eat. And of course was here, went to college here, and of course traveled around when he was a ball player. But invariably we would pick Tony up at the airport. And the discussion on the way to the airport was which barbecue place we were stopping by on the way to wherever we were having the convention at. And when this is where it gets a little tricky, and this is how it ties back to the meta narrative here. That normally meant about 3 pounds of brisket, 3 pounds of links, and 3 pounds of chicken and some ribs. By the way, that was just for Tony. If we were picking up food for the rest of us, that was okay. But he could probably down about half that in one sitting, and then the subsequent meal that evening, he would finish it off. And so if you ask Tony, what qualifies as barbecue? It's going to be all of the above. He doesn't care. He's an equal opportunity consumer of whatever it might be. Doesn't matter. It's all good in Tony's eyes. But there were a couple of places here. Good Company is a place that we have here in Houston, which is well known. In fact, we made special 20-mile out of the way trips occasionally to get Tony some Good Company. So I know that there are those outside of Texas who think about barbecue the same way that we think about it here. I'll just leave it at that.
So I don't have a Tony story, but I will say now that I think I've got my technical issues figured out, so I'm not getting a bunch of reverb. I've got Joe's Kansas City Barbecue. So Joe's KC is the place you want to go. That's a good place. You want to go to Arthur Bryant's. That's a classic. Definitely go to Arthur Bryant's. And then there's a kind of a newer place called Q39. And I don't know if I'm sure nobody from Q39 is listening. It's a newer place. I really wanted to hate it because it was kind of an upstart probably 10 years ago ish. And I really wanted to hate it. And then I went there and it was amazing. It was so good. And so I couldn't hate it. And so it's now one of my favorites. So Q39. So if anybody's looking for restaurant suggestions for Kansas City, that's just one more service I provide is restaurant suggestions. And I'm not limited to barbecue. I'm a foodie. I'll do any genre you want.
So Eric, Chris has assumed the role of podcast cartographer. You're like the podcast concierge.
I'm the podcast concierge. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll hook you up with the restaurant suggestions. We'll do. Yeah, absolutely. And and I've got my cocktail right here. So it's. Go. I mean, it's.
I was going to say you were giving us cocktail advice before we started.
Yeah. Well, I'll give restaurant advice. I'll give cocktail advice. I mean, I'm the concierge.
And I will say Gary's in China Grove, where I was lucky to walk out of once. Because in middle school, I have a younger sibling who's 2 years younger and was asking me for help in health class because they were about to do their drug and alcohol test. And I may or may not have loudly announced loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear that it takes at least 3 weeks to study for a drug test.
That
Yeah,
tracks.
yeah. Medical opinion.
See, he's everything.
No, guys, no. Don't take medical advice from a podcast.
Well, we gave some a couple of weeks ago. We could have kept Ike alive in that fictional timeline if we just said stop smoking.
Well,
So,
it seems pretty low risk to me to give Ike medical advice. I kind of think I can't kill him any more than he's already dead. So yeah, but otherwise don't take medical advice from a podcast. Don't rely on any comments that I make for your drug test. So just say no, kids.
You've heard it here from Eric Rush. Don't take medical advice from a podcast, but do give medical advice to dead people.
So,
I'll take that.
There you go.
I'll take that advice. I think that's good.
That's your campaign poster for 2024.
Oh, I don't even know what I'm running for.
Running for our lives, maybe potentially at the rate we're going now.
Yeah. Well, right. So we don't usually get political, but so we'll just say running for our lives.
I'm not going to go ahead and say this, but maybe health inspector of one of those slaughterhouses, so we don't have to go through this again.
Well, so so all those slaughterhouses in the West Bottoms, they're like 10 minutes from where I'm sitting now. They're gone. It's all like buildings and it's all shops and bars.
See, I was about to start writing your campaign ad as a local boy who made good.
No.
Coming back to help. Okay.
No. I'm not running for office.
So the topic I wanted to steer to tonight, barring some questions coming in from our listeners here, this actually came. Alexis mentioned this on the podcast. It's all sort of out of sequence. What'll be the episode released next week has already been recorded by some of the team that was here. And you guys chased I know she picked up this phrase from me. You guys chased some woodland creatures. That's what I call rabbits. Sometimes you go and chase them. You guys chased some woodland creatures that were sort of conspiracy related things. Mm-hmm. And as a rule of thumb, what we do on A Fork in Time and, the room where it happened, we get creative, as we go through that. We don't always follow the strict guidelines there, but we normally stick away from quote unquote conspiracy stuff, the actual true conspiracy stuff. I mean, there may be some alternate histories that can tie to conspiracy there. But one of the questions that came up in my mind when I was listening to that episode was I wanted to ask the team, what is your favorite, and I'm going to use this, advisedly, and people can, in air quotes, plausible conspiracy. Very often off podcasts when we're talking about where the fork is going to be, we want it to be something that's, somehow at least, reasonably plausible. So this needs to be a plausible conspiracy theory. So I want to know what the theory is. I want to know why. And my guess is one of these will ultimately turn into an episode. I'm going to select one of these conspiracy theories to probably end up being something that we explore a little bit deeper. Or we may ask our listeners in a poll to do that when they actually listen to this. That's probably even a better way to do it. Which of these would you like to hear an episode on? In fact, I've just declared now that's what we're going to do using founder fiat. Alexis has one of those if she wants to use it too. So I'm going to start with...
I just have veto power.
Yeah, there you go, which is always true. The women always have veto power, but I'm going to leave that alone at where it's at. I'm going to start with Lex. Lex, do you have a favorite historical conspiracy, again, plausible historical conspiracy theory, and why?
I do.
Okay.
No surprise where we're going. We're going to the New Forest. I think we've done this on an episode, or we've done close to it on an episode. But my conspiracy theory is, and I'm blanking and I'm not going to look it up. I'm not going to be that person. But the King of England that was killed by a hunting accident in the New Forest, I believe it was Henry I. My conspiracy theory is that was not a hunting accident.
William II?
Thank you. Yes.
I had the Horrible Histories song to help me out.
Yeah. There was William II, William Rufus.
Yeah. But that's my go-to conspiracy theory. My conspiracy theory is that was not a hunting accident.
I don't think that's much of a conspiracy theory, Alexis. I think
it's not really.
I think they needed him out of the way. So I'm on board. I will sign up for your newsletter, Alexis.
Okay.
His middle name was Rufus. Nobody wants that
Rufus.
person in charge. Go like, Rufus, you're the king.
Yeah,
No,
I actually had to explain to people why I thought it was a little questionable that he chose to be Charles III. And people looked at me like, what do you mean? He's Charles. I'm like, no, they get to pick. It's like a pope. They can do whatever they want.
Four
Yeah.
names to
Plus, he
pick
has
from.
he has like
why
4 or
would
5
you
or
not
6.
be George?
Huh?
Why would you be a king of England now or king of the United Kingdom? Why would you not be George? Like if somebody was like,
okay. Go ahead and remind us how the other two Charleses turned out.
badly.
Charles was okay.
Not well.
That's my
I
point.
think it was
Chris,
okay.
You should always
he
be a
brought
George.
back Christmas. That's the Hallmark movie that we need to have made.
Wait,
No,
what?
but I'm totally with you, Eric. If you're a king of England now, if you're a man, your name is George.
Oh, I
Like
mean,
that.
if they called me tomorrow and be like, dude, I know you're not even British, but like,
But we need you.
Oh,
out of people.
Oh.
We are fresh out of people, and I'd be like, I guess I'm George.
This is what we need to do. We need to get a Kickstarter fund, a Kickstarter started. We're going to remake King Ralph.
That was actually what popped into my head, Chris. That was actually what popped into my head.
It's a great movie.
Was John Goodman in King Ralph? That's what popped into my head.
Oh god.
Is it John Goodman? For some reason in my
Yeah,
mind,
it's John
it was
Goodman.
always
Oh, yeah.
Rodney Dangerfield.
No, it was
No,
John Goodman.
no.
It was
John Goodman.
It was John Goodman.
Maybe I've just seen Back to School too many times because that is just ingrained as like a core memory. But I still say Oliver the Second.
Not my favorite John Goodman role in a movie. I have several.
Big Lebowski.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Raising Arizona, which he has
That's a good one.
a reasonable part in there. But yeah, the first thing that popped into my head, we were thinking alike, Chris, which is I don't know if that's sad or good. We were both thinking King Ralph here. Okay, so Alexis's conspiracy theory is the death of
How'd
William
we go
Morris.
from that to okay? I don't want to know how we went from that to John Goodman, but moving on.
We're killing
Well,
English
would
kings,
you-
which we do somewhat regularly on this show. So
We can, Alexis, you can watch this and you can watch the recording. You can see the whole progression, or we might say degeneration from your conspiracy theory into King Ralph. Like you could anytime you want.
No, I'm not going to
Okay.
say it.
Robert, you're up next. Favorite conspiracy theory from plausible conspiracy theory from history.
John Paul I.
Little Godfather 3-ish kind of action here going on.
Yep. Did not die of natural causes as presumed.
Wow.
Killed.
I have only ever seen Godfather 3 once, which is ironic given that I've seen the other two. I couldn't tell you how many times.
Oh,
I
same
do
for
know that-
me. I watched it once and that was enough for me.
Yeah.
Same. But
Yeah,
I really like the scene where Michael confesses. That scene always stuck out to me as like, see, that was the best scene in the whole movie.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a low bar, Eric. For Godfather. It's a
But I
low
want to
bar.
give Francis Ford Coppola something.
You still
So Robert, in your theory, who are the culprits?
Oh, the Cardinals.
Oh.
The Curie is more appropriately the inside the Vatican guys.
The Curie. Okay.
Yep, because he was upsetting the apple cart too much. So then they just went and elected John Paul II, who upset it even more.
Well,
And
that's an interesting point, Robert. I talked about something may get turned into an episode here. And I am going to leave that to our listeners to vote, but no JP2 it has some interesting repercussions because of the timing and the what's going to start happening there with the fall of the Eastern Bloc and some of the other things that are going on. The fact that he was from Poland. There's some interesting stuff there.
you lose the Pope, the President, and the Prime Minister trilogy if you lose that.
Okay, that one's a good one. Eric Rush, you're up next.
Wyoming doesn't exist. That's my conspiracy theory. That's my favorite one. Wyoming isn't real. It's not.
On another podcast, somebody did an episode on a similar thing with Finland.
Finland. Well, okay.
Yes.
So
okay.
No, Chris,
Yeah.
Finland is real. Don't be ridiculous. But Wyoming does not exist. And so anybody who feels like they've been to Wyoming has had implanted memories. It is actually just a rift in the space-time continuum. And so if you think you're going into Wyoming, you're not. Or you may wake up in Canada with no recollection of what happened. So, that's my conspiracy theory is Wyoming doesn't actually exist.
Isn't that
I love
podcast
this
called
for so
Welcome
many
to Night
reasons.
Vale?
What?
Isn't that podcast called Welcome to Night Vale? Isn't that in this
I
place
don't know.
called Wyoming?
I don't
you
know.
Say exists or doesn't?
Well, maybe they just know the truth, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this for so many reasons.
So I have
this has to
been-
do with the podcast.
Allegedly, I've been to Wyoming 3 times, Eric.
No, you haven't.
And you're saying I haven't.
No, you went through a rift in the space-time continuum. You had implanted memories by
So who's behind this?
Dick Cheney.
the Illuminati. I mean, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, a
Duh.
German book club, of course.
Oh, wow. It sure felt like I was there. It was really cold one of the times that I was there. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, rifts in the space-time continuum are pretty cold. I mean, yeah.
So Riverton was not Riverton. That was me going to the rift when I
No,
went to
well,
Riverton.
that's probably in Colorado. So like, there's some parts of Wyoming that people think are real. They're just parts of Colorado.
So does this mean that Liz Cheney is from the continuum?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah.
And Dick as well. Wow.
Clearly. I mean, think about that. Like, think about the Cheneys being as sort of denizens of this rift in the space-time continuum. And I think reality makes a lot more sense.
So, Don, that explains why that guy apologized to Dick Cheney for him shooting him. Because in the rift, he shot at Dick Cheney. And he had to apologize for his rift self.
Exactly. You really understand this, Eric. Thank you.
It's a thing shared between Erics, of course. We're all born with that knowledge.
Okay.
We are born with that knowledge.
So now we're going to go to the other Eric, to Bond, for his. Since we're in the Eric vein.
I was very close to just giving you a weird thing I was raised with from my dad's side of the family, but I wanted to go with something plausible. So I think Thomas Jefferson might have had James T. Callender killed.
Tell us more.
Yeah, we're intrigued.
Okay, so
color us intrigued.
So, are you guys familiar with James Callender, pamphleteer? He wrote a lot of the attacks on first George Washington. He was actually hired out by Thomas Jefferson to write a series of attacks on George Washington towards the end, particularly about his policy towards France. And then Thomas Jefferson kind of patroned the guy during the Adams administration. So that way Adams would get a series of attacks, mostly about the Sedition Act, to which James Callender was then charged and fined. Now, he was pardoned under Thomas Jefferson the first day of his administration, but because Thomas Jefferson refused to pay James Callender became part of a Federalist newspaper and started attacking Thomas Jefferson and providing the receipts of their correspondence, to where Thomas Jefferson would basically say, I need you to attack Washington, now I need you to attack Adams. And James Callender had been in legal trouble because of this, to the point to where Thomas Jefferson almost brought back the Sedition Act just to charge him with it. And in a court case, they ended up just suing him for libel. And while he was about to go to a court in New York for one of the newspapers that had published his correspondence with Thomas Jefferson, James Callender is found dead in about 3 feet of water outside of the capital of Virginia. And the coroner quickly just says, yep, he just drowned. He was just found literally face down. And the governor who urged him to pass this off quickly was Thomas Jefferson's first cousin.
So a murder and a conspiracy to cover up the murder.
Yeah.
All right.
By a sitting president.
By a sitting president who was notoriously bad at calculating money because he didn't keep a ledger. Thomas Jefferson always just kind of did the calculations in his head and just figured, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, and I think the more I learn about Jefferson, the less I like him.
Yeah, he was a weirdo. He had weird theories about Hamilton, about him being in charge of some weird monarchist conspiracy. And it's like, wow,
weird ideas
he really
about
was an American president.
And he was, and he was he fought dirty with everything, fought really dirty. Even if we're not like, let's take the potential murder out of this. I mean, that's a new wrinkle. But let's take that out of it, and even with those, even with the things that we've proven that Jefferson did, like he fought dirty.
Yeah, it's either I don't know if it's more of a he ordered it to happen, or if it would have been would someone rid me of this priest kind of situation. But that's my push for the pod. I also came close to suggesting the business plot.
That's actually where I was. That I was business plot.
Yeah.
I think that was, and it's somewhat, it kind of, I don't know how to fit it into the plausibility. Is it plausible in terms of, is the popular conception about this real? Would it have worked as it was talked about? So, is everyone at least here familiar with the business plot and knows what we're talking about?
I cannot say that I am, Chris. So this is why I love the podcast. I get it.
So a guy named Smedley Butler, who was an American Marine who had been like involved in the Boxer Rebellion suppression, had done time in Nicaragua, Haiti, all of the U.S. interventions throughout Latin America, all through the early 20th century, retired and got involved with the Bonus Army in 1932, which, I'm not getting into that because I see heads moving. Basically, he, after the suppression of the Bonus Army, he came out and endorsed Roosevelt and worked for Roosevelt's election. And I'm laying this out pretty straight, but here's the crazy stupid thing about this. He also had come out and correct my timeline on this, Eric. Had he already come out with what I'm about to talk about as to why it's kind of insane that he's the guy they picked for this? Because
No, I think it was after he had started working for the Roosevelts.
Okay.
I think that's part of the reason why they thought he would be a good one to lead it.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
no.
That was in Roosevelt's first term. The business plot was in Roosevelt's first term.
No, I'm talking about where he comes out and says that I was hired muscle for capitalism.
Yeah, the war is a racket.
Yes.
Yeah, so, that was.
Yeah, that's why I said that. Like, when you hear like former Marine got involved in politics, you're picturing a certain thing. No.
2-time Medal of Honor winner.
Yes, read about Smedley Butler. It's kind of really like against typecast where he takes it, but it's an interesting place. And the reason I bring this up is as some people who jumped the gun a little bit on me, after Roosevelt gets elected, supposedly he is contacted by one guy, one or two people who claim to have Wall Street ties, and what they're trying to do is get him to organize either the American Legion or another veterans group to basically pull a black shirt fascist overthrow of Roosevelt, the man he had just worked to get elected. And it doesn't make a lot of sense once you know anything about Smedley Butler that he would like take part in this. He immediately goes to the original House Un-American Activities Committee and starts giving testimony about this fascist plot to overthrow the Roosevelt administration. and it kind of peters out there. But it's like, first and foremost, Douglas MacArthur is around and is known and is the basis for this exact character in 7 days. What is it? 7 Days in May. That's the basis of this guy. And let's throw in the Eisenhower reference to get him back into it. You can really see that pairing like appearing in that movie. If people know what I'm talking about, the chief of staff being a relatively straight shooter and the head officer being a slightly megalomaniacal semi-fascist. But have I done it justice, Eric?
Wow. I have some study. I have some studying and reading to do. Some of this I know. A lot of this I don't. So that might be an interesting one if our listeners suggest that. Mine is I'm going to tie to a personal story. Is being a native of Houston, having family that lived in the Dallas area. We would occasionally go to Dallas, but in all the times of going to Dallas, most of the family members that I had that lived up there lived in, suburban Dallas, out from Dallas proper. And so, there's no good reason to go into downtown Dallas. I'm not sure there is a good reason to go into downtown Dallas today, if you actually want to think about it. But it wasn't until much, much later, I can't tell you how much later, but I was an adult. I think I was a married adult by this time. Alexis may have already been born at this point. It was my first time to ever visit Daley Plaza. And
I've been to the museum, so
I have to. We probably went. That's probably when you went the first time, Lex, to the Sixth Floor Museum. I'm looking over here at my bookshelf. I think I've talked about this before in another episode. I have about almost one full width of a bookcase there on Kennedy assassination stuff. It's one of my little things. Lots of conspiracies around that. So you can pick whichever one you want to pick there, right? That have been in all the various movies. Oliver Stone, induced or not otherwise, as the case might be. But my favorite personal one is I actually do believe that LBJ knew the assassination was going down. I'm not saying he was one of the conspirators in terms of being the ones who had put things into motion, but it is my belief that LBJ, this conspiracy theory, but again, talk about plausible, something I could buy and something I can believe to be true, is that that LBJ knew and chose not to do anything to intervene to stop it. So much so that I think I made the comment to a family member, maybe his wife at a time. I really thought we were going to go to Daley Plaza. It's going to be wandering around, and there would be this moment where like the clouds would part and a voice would come down from heaven, and all that I would hear in a low muffled tone was LBJ knew. And then I would have it confirmed for me. But I actually hold to the concept that while he was not part of what put the plan into motion, that LBJ knew that it was going to happen, and he didn't do diddly to stop it.
But by the way, now I have a reason to go to downtown Dallas with a loudspeaker just to mess with people.
I mean, you got to see downtown Dallas. You
too.
Oh, I've been to downtown Dallas.
And you want to go back?
To mess with people. Mess with people.
I guess that's fine.
Chris,
Don,
is that why you send me that picture of you dressed as JFK Jr. and said I'm going to Dallas?
No.
That was a very weird day, buddy. No. I'm just like...
you guys know where I work. There are so many things that I can say.
So, Don, I have questions.
Okay.
And... So number one is, so you mentioned you don't think LBJ was necessarily part of the conspiracy, which I mean I agree with. Who were the conspirators, and then who tipped off LBJ in your mind?
Part of this is based upon LBJ's mistress talks about him getting a phone call. I guess it was the night before. Is he in Austin? I think that's where he is. Before he joins the presidential party in Fort Worth or in Dallas. And she only hears one side of the conversation, but obviously she knows something going on. She sort of he says basically, we're not going to talk about this. She later sort of puts two and two together. Your question though is who is behind it? I think that it more than anything else was mafia related, where it's I think it's a combination. I don't believe I don't believe in sort of the middle, sort of the Oliver Stone JFK type of thing, the military industrial complex, type of thing per se. I just I believe that there was enough bad blood between the Kennedys and the mafia that particularly with as adamant as Bobby was about going after, despite the other connections that had, apparently allegedly let me say that multiple times like you did the other day, Eric, allegedly. But I think that it was essentially a mob hit that plenty of people in other places knew about and were like, we're not going to stop this, just let it go ahead. So, was the CIA involved? Not as an active participant. I think a little bit like the LBJ thing, is a passive participant. That's my take. And, do I actually believe that? No. But I think it's within the realm of plausibility that, a lot of the people that have been sort of looped in as conspirators there weren't really conspirators in the active sense. They were conspirators in the passive sense of, hey, I know about it, but I'm not doing anything to stop this. Because if I try to stop it, I'm a target. If I try to stop it, so why try to stop it, kind of thing.
Wasn't there a guy who, I can't remember his name, but he was going to testify to the Committee on Assassinations, and he was like a mob informant, and he ended up getting shot on the way to there or before he was set to testify.
Yeah. And there's lots of reasons to believe that Dallas was like the third or fourth time that they had tried to put all this in motion. There'd been other cities, other opportunities that had been missed along the way. And ultimately Dallas was the place that it actually happened. The whole reason for me, in reality, the whole reason for me believing the mob part of this is, the assassination of the assassin, or at least the fall guy, the pretend assassin, whether he was or he wasn't.
Patsy.
Yeah, the Patsy.
By a mob-connected guy, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's just too much there. Just a couple of weeks ago, actually, within the last week, I listened to one of the other YouTube channels I see a lot of stuff on, talking about, all the strange circumstances around Marilyn Monroe's death, and how that tie, potential Kennedy involvement in that, mob and all the things that go with that. And so again, my conspiracy here is that LBJ knew. Didn't get the voice from heaven that day, but that doesn't mean it's not true. Get the voice from Chris's loudspeaker that day, but that doesn't mean it's not true.
This is not a crazy conspiracy theory at all, Don. Like I could see this. I can see the mob connection. Like this is not hard for me to see. And CIA had many reasons to hate JFK after Bay of Pigs. FBI had reasons to hate JFK with what Bobby and J. Edgar Hoover. They did not get along. So there's many reasons, many people that would stand to profit, or at least not be interested in standing in the way. So I think this is pretty plausible.
Now, one of the interesting ones I'm looking at the book over here is actually called Best Evidence. My favorite sort of weird JFK thing, a guy by the name of David Lifton wrote a book, which you may or may not be familiar with. And the concept there is that the body was intercepted between Dallas and the Bethesda autopsy, taken to another location where the body was altered before it was presented to the Bethesda autopsy. And that's the reason you have some of the strange things that you do in the Bethesda autopsy that don't match with what people, what direction did the bullet come from, all the other types of things that are there. But it's a pretty elaborate scheme that the body was heisted between Dallas and its arrival at Bethesda to be taken to some place, and the body was modified.
I thought you were about to say Bubba Hotep, and you were about to put that on for us on the live stream.
And by the way, if that happened, LBJ knew. I'm just saying. That's how all of that comes back around.
And you need to listen to our room where it happened, where we talked about the room at Parkland Memorial.
That's true. Which was one of the better episodes, I think.
Because there was actually in Texas, there was a huge battle between Secret Service and the Texas Rangers. Because the Rangers were like, no, he's staying in Texas because Texas law says he's killed here. We have to autopsy the body, and the Secret Service is shoving to get out. And
This is a homicide. Homicide is a
Yeah.
state thing. This is where we're going to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we will put these 6 things out. You guys may have to send me an email to remind me what they are. We'll put these 6 things out to a vote. So for our listeners who are listening to this, go to www.aforkintimepodcast.com and you'll find the survey there about which of these conspiracy theories you would like to see turned into an episode. We may do more than one of them because some of them have legs here, but we'll one of the things that will come out of this is a chance for our audience to pick a winner for something that will come back and I think any of these could be fun. I'm very intrigued by the fact that I want to know who implanted the memories that I have of Wyoming, but that's a whole other thing. So,
Dick Cheney, right? I mean, who else would do it?
Anybody here a fan of the show 24, the Kiefer Sutherland?
No.
Anybody watch that?
No. I've lived under a rock when it comes to television for probably, I don't know, 15 years at least.
It was probably on.
The first 2 seasons of that show. One of the Haysbert is the actor's last name. The one that was
Dennis Haysbert.
Yeah, Dennis Haysbert plays the presidential candidate that he's trying to keep from being assassinated in the first season of 24. And his wife, his name is Palmer. His wife's name is Sherry. And she ends up being a bad character. And so a running joke in my household between my wife and others, when we were watching the show, and they say anything that went wrong, whose fault is it? Sherry Palmer. So Eric, when you've gone there, whatever's going on in Wyoming, it's Dick Cheney, right? It's got to be Dick.
I mean,
now I do have an interesting fact about the place called Wyoming. In their 1984, allegedly in their 1984, Bob Hope became president of the United States, and it caused a huge constitutional crisis.
Wait, what?
Oh, there was a joke thing in the 80s about them trying to get Bob Hope to run for president.
I mean, Ronald Reagan?
Yeah. But then Bob Hope had to explain, well, I was born in England. So
yeah, he doesn't meet the natural born requirement. So
that's right.
So that's actually an interesting question. Wait, were his parents U.S. citizens?
No. They all immigrated before he was 10.
Because
kind of a Cary Grant situation.
Because I remember that actually being discussed in 2008 about
with
John McCain.
About John McCain.
Well, because he was born in was he born in
Panama? Panama.
He was born in the Canal Zone, and then
but to American parents.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's not a thing. He's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, he's dead now, so he can't run for president.
He was fine.
Dead people can vote for president.
Yes.
Dead people can't run for president. Let's just make sure.
Mainly in Illinois in 19.
Yes.
We're drawing up on the hour here, so the conspiracy thing there was fun, guys. I do want to make a couple of mentions to our listeners and also to the team that's here. This is the first time I think we've had the entire team assembled that I can think about too. That's actually a unique thing. We're always missing one. But we have done a couple of things. Alexis mentioned them on the episode you're about to hear, and you've heard them in the special thing.
Inception.
Yeah,
thing where Eric mentioned something, and I was like, "Wait, it hasn't happened yet."
Interestingly enough, it was recorded in the Wyoming time zone.
Well, there you go. So, that episode may not even exist for all we know. But one of the things I wanted to mention,
it didn't. I was scared somehow I lost the recording, but we're good.
Well, it's kind of Schrodinger's episode. You'll have to open the file, and you don't even know. You could open the file, maybe it's there. You could open the file, maybe a rift in space time will swallow you up. I mean,
is it Schrodinger or Heisenberg where you can either know how long the episode is or whether you've recorded it, but not.
That would be the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You can only know one or the other, but you can't know both because the measurement of one affects the other.
Right,
if I remember
right.
I remember that from my physics.
So you can't know how long the episode is or whether you got it recorded.
Oh, that's
you
very
can know
good.
one or the other.
Oh, that's very good.
Well, then that goes into our other discussion from the other night. The fundamental component of the transporter system is the Heisenberg compensator.
Yeah,
that's right. and we're
going to be doing a Star Trek episode.
I've done so much research. I've been listening to production podcast today as my research of that, and it literally all tied in like a beautiful knot, because the night before I had watched a documentary about the Disney Renaissance, and Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg are part of the reason Star Trek the Motion Picture are made. And it's just a whole thing. I need to write it down. But Eric, growing up, do you want to know what I was told about spatial rifts?
I do. I want to know that.
I was told, Eric, that's what got Amelia Earhart. She flew into the Bermuda Triangle where a lost Atlantean power tower is, and it zapped her into another dimension.
And this just in, both Erics, LBJ knew about that one too. While we're at it,
I believe it. Well, I mean,
that would be my second favorite conspiracy theory: is Earhart actually was captured by the Japanese and killed.
Ah. Yeah,
I get that. I don't know. That seems really plausible, Robert. Is that because we know that she disappeared in a very specific area of the world, and so I think that one has legs for sure. And Amelia Earhart, her hometown, Hutchinson, Kansas.
Well, there you go.
By the way,
if she had been born in Wyoming, it would have been a given. But there you go.
No. Kansas, very real.
Kansas
Wyoming
is real. Not so much.
And that's why she learned to fly to get out
of Kansas. Well, probably, yeah.
So what I was going to mention, guys, was we have a couple of new things. LiveStream here being one of them. We're going to do another one of these. So this has been fun. We'll come back around to it. We don't know how frequently we're going to do them, but we'll let you know when they're coming up. We may try to schedule one that's a little bit more friendly to our European audience at some point. I was looking at the stats today. About 17 or 18% of our downloads are Europe. So we have about 1/5 of our audience that's, on the other side of the pond. And as far as we know, they exist. So we'll just take that at face value. But one of the things that we also have set up is a Discord server. And I have to tell you, I knew nothing about Discord servers other than just generally knowing that they were out there. But basically, they are chat servers, is what they are and other things as well. You can play games on them, other things like that. But we have a Discord server now. And we did not get a lot of traction on our website for our forum. And that makes perfect sense. We've talked about this before. Podcast is a listening audio medium. So it's not like you're in front of the computer when you're listening to it. And then if you have to go to some place to interact with it, unless you just are really intent on doing so, you're probably not going to do it later. And a lot of people are on Discord. I found Discord for some other things that I've gotten back involved in with here recently. And so I've deactivated the forums on our website. And in lieu of those, now we have a Discord server with a couple of channels there. And so if you're interested in interacting with the team, by text and by other things, it's a place that we may throw out some episode ideas or ask for feedback, that kind of thing. Join the Discord server. Go to the website. There's an easy link there. There'll be a link in the show notes for this and the audio presentation as well. But go there, sign up. We've already got a couple of our listeners that are there. Alex, what were you about to say?
It's an app on your phone. You don't even need to go to your computer.
There you go. Good point. You're right, because I have the app on the phone. That's how I knew that we had a listener that's there. So that's just another way to interact with us. And we're going to try to use that, again, to get ideas about episodes or throw out some ideas ahead of episodes to get some feedback. So it'll be a place to interact with us and, just another way to interact with the podcast, make it a little bit more interactive, make it a little bit more two-way that way. And I think that'll be an improvement over the forums. The other thing I mentioned, which sounds really weird, but it's not, because we worked very hard to prevent wars. Chris made a reference to this earlier about how we can't not have World War II. For the longest time, my challenge was to avoid the First World War at some point, kind of things. In fact, we just had somebody show up in the channel just now, as a matter of fact.
Don, we fixed it with the flu. Chris and I fixed it with that problem.
That's exactly right. It was the influenza that did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that brought to mind a game that I first became exposed to actually back when I was in high school. I'm guessing the nature of audience, a lot of people are familiar with this game called Diplomacy. And the best way I know to describe Diplomacy, it's like Risk without the dice, where you got to convince people to do things through the diplomacy part of this thing. And the reason that jumped to mind about war is it's set in Europe leading up to World War I. That's what the classic format of the game is. You play one of the major powers leading up to World War I. And so I've got during the pandemic, I knew this. I read some things about it. It's It's the type of game that one of those games a lot of people like, but you'd never be able to organize because you had to find 6 other people who wanted to play, who had like 6 hours to devote to this. It's like Monopoly. Everybody likes it, but nobody plays it, kind of deal.
Nobody likes Monopoly.
Because of the mechanics of it.
No. Family therapist like Monopoly.
That is a true statement.
My kids, I like playing Monopoly with my kids. We have fun. Maybe that's kind of family therapy, but I like playing Monopoly with my kids.
Eric,
we actually started playing it a lot when we got an Xbox version of it. Go ahead.
I was going to ask Eric, do you typically win at Monopoly?
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
No, not at all.
That was going to be my theory.
I could honestly just see him like sitting there looking at his kids. Oh, you want to charge me rent? Well, guess what?
No. So, but my 13-year-old son is an absolute tiger when it comes to stuff like this. Like he gets so into it, and he's very competitive, and he wants to win. So he's usually the one who wins Monopoly. He's really pretty good. And like I'm not pulling any punches. Like I'm not like, oh, I'll just squat on Baltic Avenue over here. No. Like I'm out for blood, and then he kicks my ass. But so yeah.
Yeah. So I've gotten back into diplomacy, and then had a resurgence during COVID because it's the type of thing that there was some play by email. It actually became a play by mail thing way back in the day, like in the 60s and 70s, because that was a one way to do it. They had these protracted games. Well, as email came along, they started playing by email. That cut down the length of the time for posting to go back and forth. And particularly with the rise of the internet here in the last 10 to 15 years, now it's something that can be played at a server location in very short periods of time or longer periods of time. So I found my way back into it. It's one of the things that I always enjoy doing. It's a nice diversion for me. And again, the way it ties to the podcast is it's about, history in the sense of what's going on setting up to these wars. And so one of the things that you'll find, again, the links for this in the show notes, you'll find this on the website, is there's a couple of places online that I've scouted out where I've started to play again. And I've set up some private games there. So if you've never played this before, you're new to it, you just want to dip your toes into it, I'll take it easy on you the first game maybe, or you can take it easy on me, but just a place that we can interact and play there. So that's the type of thing, if you know the game and you want to play with some people that not just random people over the internet, this is a place to come and do that. But there's a game waiting there right now on webdiplomacy.com. There is a Fork in Time game number 1 that has 6 openings as we speak right now. They can easily be filled. I'm in one of those, so you'll be, although it'll be anonymous, you won't know which power I'm playing until we get a little bit further into things. But I just throw that out there. Has nothing to do with the podcast, but it's podcast adjacent is the best way I know to describe it. It's just something that's fun to do and something that I'm getting back into. And it's fun to play with people, often than just, it's fun to play with strangers too, but it's more fun to play with people. I had the chance today in a game that I was in to mention something, and I probably picked up a listener today as a result of that. The guys were like, well, what's the name of your podcast? Well, send me a link, kind of thing. So, it's a place to do that as well. So just wanted to mention Discord. I think that'll be a nice way for us to interact, mention the diplomacy thing, and then just, mention the other things that are there. The last thing I'm going to mention, we're not looking to make a bunch of money here, but we do have a new store with some new logo items. And we'd done this about a year ago through a thing called TeePublic. If you'd been to the website, they did T-shirts and mugs and stuff like that. I've got my Fork in Time travel mug here, for example. Came to the dilemma, was that 2 weeks ago, Lex, that you were looking for the Tumblr type thing for the room where it happened. Go to the TeePublic site and they no longer do that. And so I had to go find a new place. So we now have an entirely new store at a place called Teespring or spring.com. And if you may, why in the world would I have a Fork in Time merchandise? I don't know. I know why I do. It's my podcast. But, you may be interested in having the stuff there, maybe, spouting a shirt, spouting a mug. When I used my mug at work, people did ask questions. It was an interesting thing to have, or even on Zoom calls, like, what's that logo on your mug kind of thing? So that's there. So you're welcome to go there. If you go there now, we're getting this up and rolling. And I'm actually going to do this really quick just to show some folks. This is the power of being in this medium and share. So our listeners should be able to see this here in a moment when it pops up, and I'll know as I look at the other. But this is actually, if you go to the link that'll be in the show notes, or go to our website. This is the store, and you can see, sampling of some of the items that were here. So we got some shirts, we got some tumblers and mugs, both for a Fork in Time, the room where it happened. And then the thing that Alexis wanted was the combo mug or tumbler, which actually has both shows with a little logo that says, how do you like your history? The two logos, we got you covered. So whether you like the alternate variety or the regular variety. So there's stuff there. If you want to take advantage of some of the merchandise, if you go there, the promo code LiveStream will be active for about the next 2.5 weeks, and it'll save you 10% on whatever's there. So it'll knock them down pretty much. There's not that much margin in these products anyway. This is mainly just for us to have a place to go and get stuff that we want to have, candidly, more than anything else. But if you're interested in some of the logoed stuff that's here, my real cool thing, and I'll ask Chris if he wants to ask a question, but my absolute favorite thing designing was what you see right here, which is, I don't know why you would need it, but I'm going to get me one of these A Fork in Time jerseys. So
it just seemed like a weird option. Like
not the weirdest one they had. I'm just gonna say, Chris, not the weirdest one they had.
Are we gonna have like a Fork in Time softball team that takes on other?
This looks to me more like a football jersey. So this will be this.
All right, now we're talking. Now we're talking.
Robert and I talked about.
Because I will bring the pain.
Yeah. What was cool to me, what Alexis mentioned that was sort of, I didn't realize this as I was going through first creating. I was sending her some of the links. Anyway, this is there. It'll be in the show notes. If you want to get a discount on the merchandise, LiveStream is the promo code that you would use. It'll save you 10%. So just so you have that there. But the interesting thing was I didn't even realize that I had done it, because the way that I was going through and loading the logos and then let you create the apparel. And so I just did like this, almost like a wizard macro thing. You just make everything, kind of deal, instead of going through each individual thing. It was when I landed on the A Fork in Time sports bra that I realized that I had no idea that I had created a Fork in Time sports bra. So, by the way, that's not available on the website. If Alexis decides we want to add it, we can always go back and do it. But it was like, I didn't know that I created a sports bra. Who knew?
I have to tell a story though. So I was talking to a coworker and I was telling her, because we've been talking about a store for my job. And I told her, I said, she's our designer, she's our graphic person. So I said, I'm going to send you the link to the podcast store. And so I sent it to her. And she was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff on here. And I was like, oh, and there could be more. And she found the button. She goes, I just made the sports bra. And I was like, you see, you can go down the rabbit hole.
Yep. Anyway, so anybody wants to do that, that's out there. That'll be up for the next, I think it's through the 15th of September is when that discount promo code will apply. So
that would be in the past. So I think you mean October.
I'm in October. Yes. I'm a little confused on time here. All right. So that's all the hawking and promoting I need to do, but just wanted to get that in here for some of the stuff that's out here. But we don't do this to sell cool jerseys, I think, despite what Chris thinks otherwise.
I didn't say it wasn't cool. I was just interested in jerseys. Okay.
Chris actually asked, what's the genesis of this? As well, because it was there and I could click make a jersey. So that, there it was. I made a jersey. It was there. Unlike Wyoming, which apparently is not. So
it's not.
It's not. Eric, I feel very compelled to go into the store at some point and make some Wyoming-based merchandise now. But
actually, no. What we need to do is have a map of the Western United States and just put a giant question mark where Wyoming is. Out. Yes.
Maybe just a giant question mark.
Because for those of you out there, I saw we've got all this wonderful logo stuff, and okay, the logo, but I was like, maybe some stuff inspired by. I did one. I loved it. I don't know if anybody else even paid attention to it. Whatever, I don't care. Was Bismarck doing a Captain Picard facepalm?
Yes. Yes.
For those of you who weren't on that episode, which is one of the earlier episodes that Chris was on, I had to look at that the whole time, basically, that we were recording the episode. I think he made it his Zoom background for most of what was there. So it was. I like the idea of doing that. We were actually looking at a different podcast that's in a related genre to us, I guess, yesterday that Chris has suggested, who does a lot of that. So all of this is a teaser to say, visit the store. Who knows what you may find? The stuff that's there now is what's there. But I think that Wyoming shirt is gonna happen. That Wyoming shirt is gonna happen.
Oh, it needs to happen.
I want the shirt.
It will happen.
You'll have our artwork tonight.
All right. Send it on to me, Chris. It's the cool thing about it is Alexa's saying it's a pretty cool site. It's easy for us to do, so it's there. But if you wanted to have, I use my Fork in Time mugs and tumblers all the time. By the way, there's a pint glass and Eric for your drinking pleasure. They have like a small like a tumbler for mixed drinks as well. Yeah, Scotch glass kind of thing. So there you go. It's all there. Anybody have anything else they want to hit? We're over the hour. We said we'd try to keep it to about this length to make it reasonable because we're not good about doing that all the time. But we get having fun and time gets away from us. Anybody have anything they want to share before we go?
We're gonna have to do this again.
Yeah, we will. It probably sounds to most of our listeners like Alexis and I say the same thing over and over again. But there's a reason we say the same thing over and over again. One of the cool things about this for me was I started this to do something with Alexis, something that we had that was a common interest. And I've enjoyed doing that. That's been a big part of what's there. What I did not imagine along the way is I would meet some other cool people. And I was actually looking at some stats today. Brent Fost, who, by the way, holds the mark for most guest appearances, because you guys aren't considered guests now anymore. You've moved over into the other category when I did some tabulating. Was one of the first guys that reached out and said, "Hey, I got an idea for an episode." And I reached out to him and said, "Hey, would you like to join the episode?" And the next thing I knew, it wasn't me recording. It wasn't Alexis recording. It was somebody else. And I'd invited some friends, some of the folks you've seen on episodes. And Robert was on one of those early episodes as a guest. We talked about what if there was no Star Wars. Part of the reason we want to do the live stream, this is how this comes back all around, is we get to do this for about 15, 20, 30 minutes, sometimes before an episode or after an episode, where we just chat as friends and as people. Sometimes it's about history. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's about work. Sometimes it's about barbecue, whatever the subject is. But I did not imagine at the time that we started this little alternate history thing that that's what this would end up also having an opponent to. And so that to me is what's cool. And that's why we wanted to do a live stream, was let you guys get in on it. May not be as fun for you as it is for us, but it's fun for us. We enjoy doing it. We enjoy each other. We come from very different backgrounds. We're very different people with very different histories and different outlooks. And that's a good thing. Diversity is a really good thing. And we try to encourage that. And even I mentioned the first listener that was actually the second person to join our Discord server, started interacting with him. He's actually from the United Kingdom. And it was just fun to get his take on some things. Because even though I used to work by the way, I've changed jobs here. That's a whole other thing we're not even going to get into now. I'm in the process of transitioning jobs. Used to work for a Scandinavian firm, but I quickly learned that, people in other countries and other parts of the world, other parts of this country have different viewpoints than I do. And it's a good thing to listen to each other. And so that's why we enjoy doing what we do here. Now, we go down the alternate history path, which is part of what we do there. But it's beyond that. So that's what the live stream is about, and why we enjoy doing this. And the last plea that I'll make here is there's room for anybody else who wants to come. Dylan, throughout the question here, Dylan joined me on the Elvis episode. Dylan's going to come back. We already talked about episodes that he'll participate in. If you're out there and you're going, the next live stream, I want to be in one of these boxes. You can be. Just let us know. We're open to the idea of adding to the production team. It's been a wonderful gift. This is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll promise not to do this on every episode. But a wonderful gift over the last 6 to 7 months. As Alexis went through her wedding, we were busy with that. As we had some issues with a family health crisis inside the family and other things, the people that I can see on my screen, and you can see them right now, jumped in. And, was it the most important thing in the world to get an episode released? No. But was it something that I wanted to get done? Yes. And there were people who could jump in and do it and wanted to do it. They volunteered to do it. They enjoy doing it. And I didn't imagine that's where we would be. There were a lot of solo episodes for those of you that have gone way back in the catalog. There's a lot of Don just talking to Don, talking to dead air kind of stuff. And we don't do that anymore. I talk a lot, but not to dead air anymore. And so that's a big part of it. I just wanted to say that. We promise we will stop saying that at some point. But the reason we say it every time is it's a part of what we enjoy.
Texans, and we say it all the time.
Yeah. Anybody have anything they want to say before we close out? And again, I'm mindful of time here, but don't want to cut anybody off.
I found it.
Uh-oh. You found the Bismarck thing?
Absolutely. I found it. Yes, I'm sharing it.
All right. There you go.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Gotten that, Chris.
Huh?
There you go.
I'd forgotten about that.
Oh, yeah. And it really works with the episode, too. It's like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I remember the first episode. Yeah, I was thinking about this today. I was actually going to get to one point. We'll do that at some other point. Think about the first episode I did with each one of you guys at some various point. And I remember the first episode I did with Chris was, I guess that was the Annie Oakley Kaiser Wilhelm episode, right?
And also the amazing story about that is you called me and I was in Fontana, California. And I had flown back to DC and had was on my way to driving to a work meeting in Atlanta when I stopped off in Charlotte to record it. And that was the week the world shut down.
Yeah, that was COVID. Yeah. All right. One last time around. Anybody got anything? All right. Most of you are probably listening to this because you weren't able to join for the live stream. Most of you are probably listening to this as an audio feed on the normal channel. It is on our YouTube channel. For those of you that don't know, we have a YouTube channel. We put each podcast episode out on YouTube. This is one you want to go see on YouTube because you can see people talking, you can see faces. So visit the YouTube channel. Again, link in the show notes. There ought to be a podcast t-shirt, link in the show notes, because every podcast has to do that, right? Over and over again. But this will be on YouTube as well. All right. I ain't got anything else, guys. It's moving towards the latter part of the evening here. So thanks for joining. Alexis, you let Jake off the hook, I guess, today, but we saw him get up and move. And again, we have his waivers, so we're good to go on that as we go through there.
Next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Happen.
I will send you the USB extension.
That works. All right.
He's
Guys,
coming
that's all
with
I
me
got.
to DC, Chris. So
is that's happening? Okay.
All right. For Eric, Robert, Alexis, Chris, and myself, we want to say thanks. Have a good night. And we're going to suggest if you happen across a room where there's some history going on, get inside the room and tell us what happened. And if you happen across a fork in time, our suggestion is to take it. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast. Learn more and provide feedback by visiting our website at www.aforkintimepodcast.com. Connect to us on Facebook at facebook.com/aforkintime or follow us on Twitter at AFIT Podcast. If you want to support the show financially, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/aforkintime. We hope you will join us next time.